Hello, welcome to All For United with me, John Foster, MUFC. We've got two people joining me and Natalie tonight. Stuart, how are you doing, Stu?
Very, very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming back. It's an interesting show, right up your street, this one tonight. So I'm looking forward to this one. Jack, welcome back, mate. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for coming back on. I've missed one podcast since we've been doing this in September, where Natalie basically held the fort by herself, and Jack was the one who was her guest. So that's the only one that I've missed, and so it's great to actually get Jack back on. So brilliant. Natalie, how are you, mate?
I'm good, John. Looking forward to this one. It's going to be a good one.
It was a good idea. Natalie's kind of idea regarding like the topic regarding the press conferences, and I know that she'll speak to Jack behind away from the camera about it. So I think it was a great idea to bring this on. And Stu, I know how fond you are of this subject as well. So it's going to be a good one. There are some other topics tonight. So obviously we want to talk about this Sky and BBC deal that's going to start the show. I think it's good news, but there are some pros and some cons which we'll discuss in the early stages of the video. I do want to hear Stu and Jack's thoughts on the Arsenal game. I'm fully aware of this in the past now, but obviously we haven't had a chance to speak to Stuart and Jack about it just yet. So I think it'll be good to hear those points of view as well. And also, just is this now the right time to potentially look at expanding the WSL into more teams? So we can have a look at some sort of structure there, which Stuart will be kind of leading some conversations on that one. So, look, thank you to everybody in the comments, by the way. Lots of people watching. Please stick the thumbs up. Nat, over to yourself then regarding Sky. So it was broke basically in the middle of the night, about 12 o'clock. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was last night, but it was midnight, so I must have been up late. I'm happy. I'm buzzing. Of course, I'm happy. It's it's what we've waited for forever. It's what we've wanted. It's going to be like a dedicated show, and it's getting the game out there. I think it's going to raise the standards for everyone in everything. Refs, pitches, everything that we moan about is going to sort of have a shine a light on it a lot more and make it improve, or lead to just drastic improvements in places. I think I've been very vocal on social media today. I know Stu has as well. But the one thing that is really worrying for me is the kickoff times. There's the first kickoff time was Sunday at 12:30. We're used to that. Maybe not used to going away with that, but we're used to, LSV being kickoffs at 12:30. But the one that I really do not like, I don't understand. I can understand why from a football, like getting people watching on telly, is 11:30 at on the Saturday. I think that is. Yeah, that'll be the second choice. So I think they're the two Sky ones because they get the first choice because they're putting the money in most of it anyway. And then there's 6 on a Sunday, which I prefer to 11 to be honest. And then the Friday. So they're saying basically the last 2, maybe you might not get a lot of them, but the first 2 is what you're going to get a lot of. And, speaking to a journalist as well, someone who we might get on the show, and I speak to him a lot, he's called Glenn Moore, and he's sort of saying Man United, they'll have you on a lot and you'll be out a lot of these 12:30, 11 o'clock. And, for me, what my worry is, and I've sort of been told not to worry, it won't happen, but, they say don't worry and then things happen. If we have Brighton or if we have a London team away or Reading or something like that, I'm asking people to get up at 5 o'clock, not to be up out of the bed, to be on the bus ready to go. So that's what getting up at 4 and this and that is. For me, I think away teams, they're growing. You're seeing more fans go away, and I think this isn't going to help anyone. If they are definitely serious about regionalising it, I think it can work. If we only have the far ones. Liverpool at 11, that's okay, Everton and that. But if you're asking people from Manchester to go down, it's just going to make it more difficult, and it's not needed. But, people are saying that's the consequence and all of this. But I don't see why it has to be a consequence. I think we could work together. We can talk it out. We could, if they consult fans, Stu's part of the FSA, Barmy Army are part of the FSA. This is what it's there for, to fight against these kind of kickoff times. And in a horrible way, I don't want to say it, but I can see it going like the men's, and this is it, take it or leave it. You either want to go or you don't. And we're running the show now, and it sounds really horrible, but that's what it could come towards. And I know Stu was saying it more harsh than me, but it's one of them. I'm on my hat with it's so good. It's gonna, dancing whistles. But then I'm thinking, what about me who wants to go and watch them actually play?
Yeah. So I've been like you, Nat. We've been doing these podcasts in September, and as soon as Sky's name was branded around, from a selfish point of view, I thought it was kind of a good thing, because I think for Man United, I think we'll be fine. We'll talk about the lower teams throughout the show, but from a Man United fan, I think it's good. I think it's a good way to eventually increase attendances, because people start watching it, get a bit of interest, get loyal to the team, and then start buying season tickets. We hope. Well, I hope. So I definitely saw that as a good thing. But obviously, we all knew that it wasn't going to be rosy, or else it would have been, done and dusted before now, I would have thought. So Stu, let's just bring you in on it. So what was your immediate reaction when you kind of read the detail?
Well, before I go on to that, I just want to touch on Natalie's point about having to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go and watch games. I'm based in Portsmouth on the South Coast, and I've previously been a Man United men's season ticket holder. So welcome to my world, Natalie. Almost every game was like that. If anything, I actually quite liked the 12:30 midday kickoffs. They were an early start, but at least I actually got back in home to have an evening to myself. I think we get back about 7:30. So it is a bit of a pain, but I quite enjoyed those little coach trips after everyone had their initial 45-minute, 2-hour nap. By the time we've hit Oxford, everyone was kind of awake and chatting and buzzing for the game. But with regards to the news itself, I actually put out three tweets this morning, and it was all the same thing. But my initial reaction, really angry, didn't like it at all. Then I kind of softened slightly, and then I thought, okay, well, actually, on balance, it probably is overall a good thing, but there are things that we need to be aware of and just make sure are managed properly. And fundamentally, I have the same view as everyone. The more exposure of women's football is a good thing. Natalie said it when we spoke earlier, and the girls are getting paid. The money, well, we hope, is going to go towards these players, and those are the ones that really deserve it the most: the players and the staff, volunteers at the club, and hopefully the youth and infrastructure within the women's club being slightly more self-sufficient. So hopefully it comes out. So overwhelmingly, it is a good thing. The kickoffs, like Natalie says, it's going to go the way of whatever Rupert Murdoch and Sky want. Ultimately, I'm confident that on the whole, I don't think you're going to find those random fixtures against maybe your Bristols, your Birminghams, are going to be in the really unsociable slots. I imagine those games are going to be used for local derbies and sort of the more high-profile games. They're not going to look at the top against bottom games, because from a televised perspective, that's not what draws in the crowds. They want Arsenal, Man U. They want the Manchester derby. They want Arsenal versus Chelsea. With respect to the teams involved, they're not that fussed about West Ham versus Reading on a Friday night necessarily. Although hopefully they will get their slots, because there will be people that will be fussed about those fixtures and they will want to watch those primetime slots. But I think it'll be a little bit like Sky's coverage of La Liga in the men's, where you'll probably find that one of the Madrids and Barcelona's are literally televised every single week, and they've snapped up that many slots that pretty much all the big teams will get those sort of games, you'd imagine. So it just remains to be seen. My big fear is something that you touched on a little bit as well, Natalie, about the travel. Hopefully it doesn't mean that fans don't travel. If they think, I can just watch it on TV. You got Manchester United fans and the Barmy Army, famous, notorious, whichever side you sit on, about building an atmosphere. And if you are lacking fans, home fans and away fans, then you're automatically going to get a poor atmosphere for it. While a lot of clubs are starting to build an atmosphere with the home fans, the to and fro in between the sets of fans is what builds the atmosphere. And I went to the Tottenham Arsenal game at the Spurs Stadium, which I was going to say it was probably last year, but it was probably about a year and a half ago now, with time flying during the pandemic. And it was good. I think it could be better, because I think I'd have liked to have seen a larger allocation for the Arsenal fans, because they could have probably sold out a whole end and they could have opened up the whole stadium. But, bless you. But yeah, I don't want to take up all Jack's time, but I think that there are definitely concerns. And my last concern, which I'll be very brief on, is just the trickle down of the money. There is 25% of the money going down to the Championship, which is really good, but there's nothing going to the third tier, and it just creates a monopoly. The only teams that are going to be able to make it out from that third tier, I would say, you're looking at Burnley, Southampton, and Wolverhampton Wanderers. And the common denominator between the three of them is that they've got men's teams that can afford to take the financial hit. You're going to find clubs like Portsmouth, Yeovil, Fylde. They don't have those rich backers, so it does create a monopoly, and it's going to be a big, big challenge to the Football Association to try and close that gap over the next 5 years, because otherwise it's just going to get wider and wider and wider and wider.
And I think that's basically one of the biggest worries, isn't it, from speaking to you previously about the gap widening. And this is obviously one thing that could happen. Stuart, we will come back to you. We've got a lot of comments. Nice one, Matt. Anybody who's on our Twitter page, come and have a look at Matt's live show tomorrow. We'll be discussing the same subject from a few different points of view. Go on, Natalie.
Yeah, just saying, drop a like on as well. If you're watching via Twitter, come onto the YouTube and drop a like on our YouTube video.
Good point. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's such a big subject, so we'll go back around the circle again. But I just wanted to hear, obviously, Jack's first impressions. And so, obviously, there are some negatives, but are you thinking that the positives will outweigh the negatives?
I think overall, yeah. I mean, I do understand the concerns that both Stuart and Natalie have raised. But I think in terms of the travel, I mean, again, like you all mentioned, maybe I'm looking at this from a United perspective. I think we're used to the 5 o'clock be on the bus brigade. You know, we have done this before, and those who, you know, being a fan, and unfortunately this is kind of what's expected of you as a fan, that yes, sometimes the kickoff times aren't that accommodating, and yes, it is like that very much so in the men's game, and to be honest, we've experienced it so far with the women's game, because yeah, we have already had to, you know, be up early, be on time, you know, and managed to navigate from Manchester to, you know, God knows where, because the other issues, of course, are that, you know, these teams in WSL, they don't necessarily play in their actual town, you know, that they'll play maybe in a smaller place, you know, just outside or around or that kind of thing. So it'll create its own issues as well. So as United fans, we're kind of used to it. And I'm not saying that like to brag or anything like that, but I think that if you are a dedicated away fan, if that's what you want to do and if that's what you want to be, then yes, you will go for it. You know, and yes, sadly, it's something that we have to do as fans, is accommodate the TV broadcasting schedule. I'm hoping that I saw that, you know, in the comments it was raised, well, what will be the difference between this and the BT deal? I'm praying that it's not just a change of one brand to the other. I want to see the move over to Sky really bring more professionalism in on and off the pitch. I'm hoping that it will encourage better refereeing, more adhering to the schedule, so you won't get these silly, you know, oh well, 20 minutes before the game's kicked off, we're done the game now, sorry, bye. You know, that if you want to talk about treating fans with respect and treating the game, the sport, with respect, and clubs and all that. That's not being respectful either. So hopefully that changes with Sky. Hopefully Sky don't list players that have already left the club on the bench, as BT did on Friday night, with Lossa Okvis listed on the bench for United against Arsenal. You know, these things, it sounds small, but it's embarrassing, really. And it's, you know, there should be professionalism in how it's brought, professionalism in how it's scheduled and played, and that goes from top to bottom, on and off the pitch, from refereeing to scheduling to the actual gameplay. So I'm hoping that it brings good things overall. Fingers crossed.
I want to vote Natalie for co-coms with Gary Neville.
It's funny you should say that, because I put a tweet out a little bit earlier saying that I think that this could be absolutely brilliant. I really think that regarding the actual broadcasts themselves, the actual television programme, I think it's there for the taking. I think it can really do. No one can do better than Sky, can they? But it is really important to myself to have. Oh, I don't know. I'm very happy with what I see on. Mind you, I haven't got Sky Sports at the moment, so I do need to get it. But they definitely go the extra mile, don't they? You know, if they're going to do it, they're going to do it good. Whether or not you agree with everything that they say is a different subject. But it is really important to me that the commentators and the pundits who they get in need to have that WSL knowledge, whether they're fans or ex-players or something. You can't just be any Tom, Dick and Harry who's good at presenting, who doesn't know anything about the actual game itself, because that could lead to some embarrassments. Nat, I want to bring you back in just before I go back to Stu, and then we'll wrap up this subject. But I just want to get clarification then from the way you see it. So there's 3 slots. The first slot is basically the best game of the weekend. Is that pretty much right? So it could be like, if it's a Manchester derby, that would be like the big slot, and that would go on the Sunday. Is that right?
Well, there's 4 slots that I know of.
Yeah.
The Sunday, the first 2, I think that Sky are going to get. And this is where I can see it going. I know Jack sort of talked about it, and Stu, and, you know, with it being the first one is Sunday at 12. So I think they're looking basically that the women's game will go in there, and maybe they can marry it up with a men's game. Because I know we had the Conti Cup, didn't we, with the City. When we beat them, and there was a good crowd for that. It's about 5,000 there for that, I think. And then a couple of hours later, 4:00, it was Liverpool game, and actually both were good results. The women won, and the men drew, unfortunately. But you know, I think back then Liverpool were going to win the title anyway. But that's the kind of thing I can see them doing. I heard Lucy Staniforth talking, and Anton from Sky actually said, you know, Super Sunday with the women. And I think that's something that I can see happening. There's also a slot on Saturday at 11. So I don't know if that's a Sky slot or a BBC slot, but that's something that'll go on. And then the last 2, they're saying they're not going to use them as much, or, well, they'll be sort of in and around if they have to move a game to fit to the men's schedule. Shane from the Birmingham also said to me, how early are we going to learn about this? You know, are they going to pick the men's team, then straight away they're going to say, right, the women's game's changed because the men's at this time. So is now the women's game changed to the Friday when it was on a Saturday, but now the men's team play? I think a lot of it is to not clash with the Premier League. And I think that's its own problem in a way. I think we're sort of devaluing in a way by sort of saying, well, we can't clash it with the men's team, and like the men's team is like going to have all the first choice, and then we're just going to change everything just to fit around them. I think at the start, yeah, you can do that, but I think, you know, potentially, hopefully, after where we're at, we'll be in a position where so many people will be watching it that it'll get its own things. It won't have to fit around the men's team. There's so many men's games that we see nowadays. They play the Europa, they play this, they play that, they play the other. That, you know, that's why I sort of got into the women's football, because it was something different. I know Lee came on here and he said it's sort of like a blast from the past kind of thing. You know, it's his own feeling, it's his own entity, and I think we should treat it like that. At the minute, yeah, we just want to get people watching and just pushing it out there, and I think, okay, but hopefully by the end of this deal, you'll be in a position where you say, well, you know what, we don't need to alter our games for the men's team. Yeah, no one wants clashes, but I sort of like it when it was just. And I'm sounding like how I in the past, not looking forward to the future, but I like it when it's just, this is the way it is. And, this is how we're going to do it. Hope I'm not breaking up for anyone.
I understand that. I understand. So that's kind of like the views from like Man United supporters. But Stu, let's look at the bigger picture for like some of the lower league clubs then, and even maybe the Championship. Would it be, obviously it's not seen as a good thing by everybody. What are your thoughts on what other fans and other clubs are thinking right now?
Well, I think fundamentally everybody thinks it's a good thing. Unless you're a troll that thinks, who cares, no one's interested, it is a good thing. I think the FA have done very well trying to market it and trying to push all their efforts to the top of the pyramid. But I just don't want to see them wait around too long before they start filtering that down. I think it's got to start next season. I think the Championship needs a sponsor. The National League needs a sponsor. Or even let's just say, come on, Barclays, you've got a little bit of money knocking about. Let's just sponsor the lot. Sponsor the whole package. I understand, obviously, there are going to be some games still available on the FA Player, which is really encouraging. So that still means that every WSL game is going to be televised. But I'd like them to start televising the Championship more and the National League more, because ultimately the reason I launched Since 71 the website was because I realised that people aren't going to buy into a product, which is women's football in this instance, if they don't know anything about it, if they don't know the players, if they can't relate to it. And the FA they get criticised for a lot of things, but they have done a very good job marketing the Lionesses and WSL. But now they just need to look at the bigger picture and the whole of women's football. The success of the Football Association and Kelly Simmons and everyone is not measured by the TV deal they get for the WSL and how big the WSL is, because otherwise it will just turn into rugby union ultimately. Sorry, rugby league. Rugby league, Super League, fantastic little tournament, but it's just the same teams. There's no real relegation. There's no one coming into it. So that it lowers the stakes, and it's just the same teams again and again and again. What we want to see a team like Leicester who can go and get relegated, but then they can come up and win the league a few years later. We want competition. And my fear is that movement is going to be quite limited, especially when the leagues are quite small. So, yeah, the minute they can open it up and they can financially incentivize and reward clubs in the Championship and in the National League, the better. I think I have heard rumours that the Championship may go professional, if not next year, the year after, which is fantastic. It really, if it doesn't go that way, then it's been a bit of a failure. And that needs to then come down. I think we then need to see the National League start to be able to pay players. I'm a little bit of a broken record with this, but my biggest frustration is when the winner of the National League, North or South, ends up with a total prize money of 0. And how can you build a team? How can you build a squad? How can you pay a player? You may well find that a lot of these clubs in the National League are weakened because you're going to find players that are all going to go up to the Championship, and you might find someone that's going to be a first team starter in the 3rd tier, but they could just be a bench warmer getting a handful of games in the league above just because they're getting paid a full-time wage. But if we can put money into the lower tiers, then they can reward those players, coaches and club staff equally.
Yeah, thank you for that insight. I just want anybody who's watching who's never seen Stuart or don't know who Stuart is, please have a look at his website, Since 71. Is it since-71.com? Is that correct?
I believe so, but if you chuck it in Google, you can't miss it.
You'll find it, yeah. Please check it out. Please check it out. Nice little comment on screen as well there. Look, we want to turn the conversation to a bit of football now. So obviously, I want to hear Jack and Stuart's point of view regarding where we are in the league at the moment. We've obviously coming off the back of that defeat to Arsenal. Jack, can you still hear me okay? Your visuals are frozen. Are you there, Jack? Jack can come.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you've come back, Jack. You've come back. I was just going to ask you about the Arsenal game then, and also where you kind of see the rest of the season now. Do you want?
Yeah, the Arsenal game was obviously. Sorry. So yeah, the Arsenal game was a bit disappointing. Very disappointing. Before the game, we were obviously thinking about getting a point, trying to, or at least a point, and trying to really maintain our top 3 chase. Now it's looking like it's going to be hard to do, and we're going to rely on the other teams around us to hopefully do the job for us. And I don't know if that's going to happen. Yeah, it was just a non-performance, really. A lot of players that didn't, like, I can't really think of one player that really took that good. You could maybe look at players and think, they didn't do that, but too many non-performances there. We did have chances, we did them. So you really have to look around on the pitch at the squad and think that a lot of changes need to be made. And I mentioned it to you, I think, yesterday. We've not had that many games since the turn of the year, but if you look at our run at the moment, looking at 4 games, those were to the established top 3 or big 3, and all of them away. The one big blemish, of course, is the Reading game that we lost at home. But when you look at 4 losses in 7 games and being able to score only 1 goal in those defeats, the one against Chelsea, it really, to be where we were, I think, around where we were top undefeated, and there was a real sense of, could we actually do this? To go from that to, well, we might just finish up 4th again. It's a real disappointment. And you have to look at everyone. You can't just look at what's happening on the pitch. You have to think about what's happening off the pitch as well. You have to maybe look at tactics, training, the setup, formation, selections, and across the board it just hasn't looked right. And the goals that we concede are, every time I look at them, and I'm just, exasperated. Every time. I mean, it's a bit of a joke because you have to laugh because if you don't, you'll cry. But every time a ball goes out for a corner or there's a free kick against United, you think, oh well, here's where we're going to concede, and more often than not, we do. So it's mind-boggling, the fact that set pieces, long balls, these tend to be our undoing. It's like amateur level defending. It just shouldn't happen. With that said, the goals that the men conceded yesterday weren't that much better. So maybe it's a Manchester United problem, not just the Woods team problem.
It could be, and Jack, I feel your frustrations. Obviously, we get a chance to chat to a lot of people on Twitter and on YouTube now, and I think everyone's pretty much in agreement with you in what you say there. And I am going to say probably something controversial on that. It'll be interesting to hear your kind of thoughts on this. The fact that what Jack just said there, with four games out of 7 we've lost, and that's obviously massive. If those 4 losses were staggered over the course of the season, would there be so much disappointment, or is it the fact that it's all come together at the wrong time? Does it make it look 10 times worse than it actually is? I've only just thought of this when Jack says 4 games out of 7, but does it look worse than it is because it's come all in one go, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. For me, if you had, I don't know how many games we've played so far, but if it was 4 over the space of 12, I think, or however many we've played, you wouldn't say it's as bad. I think it's the fact that the way we played versus Arsenal that first game compared to the way we've played now. I mean, Leah played, but I don't know if am I on?
Keep
Can you hear
talking.
me?
Yeah, it's just your visuals that's gone. Keep talking. Your camera might come back.
Yeah. So,
For Manchester
basically,
people.
I think if we'd seen, can you hear me?
Yeah, Nat, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to chat to Stu. You just try and sort out your camera. It's not just you, it's Jack as well. You both keep on going to a black screen. So I'm just going to hear Stuart's thoughts on the Arsenal game and maybe just switch off and come back on again, mate. So go on, Stu. I mean, what's your take on that Arsenal result and performance?
Yeah, don't worry, John. We can carry this between us. We've got this. Ultimately, first and foremost, the result wasn't a massive surprise based on the injuries. Jack touched on the disappointment of how everyone's fallen. The Man United have fallen away, but it's the injuries. It's pure and simple. It's the injuries. Every single top side in WSL, if they lost their equivalents within their squad, they would struggle. Like I've got the lineup in front of me here, and it's packed full of quality, no doubt about that. But you've got Katie Zellum, who's, I don't know if it's, I mean, slightly harsh to say, been relatively peripheral, considering she's captain this season. Lucy Staniforth, who has been peripheral, and she's still a new signing, ultimately. Lauren James, injured for most of the season. Kristen Press, injured for most of the season. Arthur Harris, injured for most of the season. So therefore, you can't afford to go into a game with 5 of your starting lineup, 5 of your most important players, who they're just not match fit. And when you look about the players that aren't available, if Alicia Russo was in, Tobin Heath was in, Leah Galton was in, that's just to name 3. That's a massive change in the quality of that side there. And if you have all of those players, well, if you have 5 of that 7 or 8 or 9 players fit over this post-Christmas period, you do not lose all of those games. That's no doubt in my mind about that. So I wasn't wholly surprised at the result, especially after conceding so early. It was always going to make it difficult. But it's only a fine margin in a lot of these games that's lost Manchester United points. And on paper, it looks like it's been dramatic, but it's not. Man United are better than the results suggest, and they are a victim of the injuries. And there are going to be a lot of other fans from other clubs that are going to be sit there feeling smug, thinking, Man United, they thought they were going to do it. They thought they could come in and win our league. Next season, it's going to be completely different. And I think there are going to be a few of them that are going to be silent slightly, because I'm a relatively neutral person, but those injuries have absolutely hampered Man United, and it is touch and go whether it's going to be Champions League. If there's any justice in the world, United will pinch it. But if it doesn't happen, while it's a disappointment, it's certainly not the end of the world. And I think most Manchester United fans are going to be quite balanced about that, and they'll see the improvement. If you'd have said when we won the championship that in a year's time you're going to have 2 World Cup winners, you're going to have England's best up-and-coming young players. Well, I was going to say best up-and-coming young player in Ella Toone, but you could probably throw Lauren James in there as well, and maybe some of the Turners. So it's a very, very good position. It's very unfortunate that it's just happened at such a crucial time in the season.
Yeah, I have to agree. So then I'm thinking to myself, what more could we have done? I'm sure Jack would probably think, okay, maybe we can play this person instead of this person. And Jack, final word with yourself. I mean, looking back in hindsight, what would you have maybe done differently in that game?
I don't think that I necessarily done different, like in terms of the selection. Like when I looked at the team, I'm not saying that things could have been done. Like I would have picked that person or that person. Those are like minor little things that you can maybe look at. Like maybe you think like, oh well, could we have gone with Hayley Ladd or maybe we could have tried something a bit different tactically, that kind of thing. But I think the selection in general, that was kind of pretty much the best we could go with. The one thing that I would touch upon in regards to the injuries is that most of the injuries that we've come across have been in forward positions. So it's been Russo, Heath, Leah, obviously. And yes, it does make a difference to the way that you play, and confidence and creativity, and be able to take your chances, and the dynamics of the game. But for all intents and purposes, the back seven or so, your midfield and defence, they're pretty much first choice. And the way that we defend has been poor, and it's been poor for a while now. You're not just looking at the Arsenal game, you're also going back to the beginning of the year to the Chelsea game, where we didn't have, we had Tobin just got injured then, and Russo's been out for a very long time, and the goals that we conceded, set piece, corner that's not cleared properly, and Chelsea had a lot of chances in that first half where they were wasteful, and we were lucky that wasn't maybe more than one goal that we conceded. And finally, we managed to get back into the game through a brilliant goal from Lauren. Then we're beaten by just a long punt forward from the goalkeeper because Millie and Amy just let the ball bounce between them. And I think, you can maybe, you don't want to be too critical, but I think it's fair to say that Millie, her level has dropped this season. And she's not been as reliable as what we used to. I think, we want to see what Maria is worth, in terms of her capability, whether she can maybe raise the game of others around her, and whether she's the class centre-back that we're hoping she is. But if she's not, we need to think about at least one more centre-back in the team. We need to think about a full-back to bring in, and potentially another midfielder as well. I mean, speaking about players that have not turned up for the season, and you can look at many reasons, COVID, injuries, that kind of thing, of course you can. But I don't think that Katie has really turned up for this season either. She's had maybe a few moments here and there where she's looked okay, but again, there's a question mark about her, about the leadership there, and yeah, so I really, I understand the point about injuries, but I really don't want to use that as a crutch, because I think it would have made a difference maybe to us taking chances, but having players available wouldn't have made a difference to how we defend, because that defence, that midfield, that's pretty much first team, and we need to look at upgrades there, or better coaching, so that they can, raise their game, demand more of them.
I think everything that you said there is obviously quite honest, and it's obviously a strong opinion, and I think a few people in the comments would probably agree with you, and a few fans watching this would probably agree with you on a couple of the players that you named there. You mentioned Hayley Ladd. Look, we're going to talk about press conferences in a bit. I just want to bring Stuart in, because I know that Stu just want to say something on the back of what Jack just said there.
Just very briefly, I think everything he said has been spot on with regards to defending. Maybe that I'm a little bit more in the when I coach, I'm more attack minded, but I just think if you've got your attacking players on the pitch and you go ahead in the 3rd minute, you force your opposition into scoring an own goal, that puts you on the front foot, and that takes the pressure off your centre backs slightly and your midfielders. So, and I think, yeah, I know I don't want to bang on it about it too much, but I just think when you're decimated by injuries to that degree, I think it will have an impact, and especially when it is concentrated on your forward line. And that's going to have an impact, because you lose games by those fine margins, and like you said with the Chelsea game, Jack, that game was set up and it was a fine margin. It could have gone either way, and it was whoever made that unforced error or moment of brilliance was going to win that game. And I think when you've got a fully fit front four that have been together, playing together for a nice run of games, got the momentum going between them, then that could be the fine margins shifted in Casey's direction.
Yeah, I think they're all good points. There's so many comments, I can't keep up with them tonight. But thank you for keep joining in. I know you're more talking amongst yourselves, which is great. So thank you for that. Look, it is a combination of injuries. It's a combination of individual errors. It's a combination of some players being out of form. And we just need to turn it around now for the next game. And if they can't do it at Old Trafford, then when can they do it? So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be enjoyable to see, because I'm sure, fingers crossed, we'll see a different United, because Casey needs a reaction to the sheet. So I'm sure she'll get one. We mentioned Hayley Ladd there. One of the biggest questions that we're asking the manager is, why didn't Hayley Ladd start potentially? And that brings us on to the press conferences, what questions we would kind of ask, what we would like to see, what we don't see enough of. So Natalie, if you want to start this one off, I mean, where would you like to see a change in the press conferences, or what are your thoughts currently?
We had Marisha on the other day, and we were talking about injuries, and we were talking about, why doesn't Hayley Ladd start? Hayley Ladd would have been the first choice alongside Jackie Groenen for me. And we're seeing with Hayley Ladd, she's coming off the bench against the City game, in the Reading game, she's coming off. And then suddenly, Matt talks about it a lot, we've sort of crumbled when she does come off. And is it sort of, there's these more questions like that to get asked, like who is actually injured? Why isn't Hansen starting? Hansen scored a goal. For me, I think, you might see it now with Sky. You might see more after game, analysis of why isn't Hansen come off? Hansen's your game changer. She did X, Y, and Z when she comes off. Why didn't you think of putting her on? And I just think Marisha sort of said it. Are people worried? And I don't know what. And this is why I want to hear from Stu and I want to hear from Jack. Are people worried? Like, if I say this, then I won't get back in again. And because I know there's a lot of independent, like Stu, like his blog. I know Jack's wrote for things before. Are people worried about saying certain things or asking a difficult question in the way that they would to Ollie? They're not frightened to say it to him. They're not frightened to put it on the spot with Klopp either. But I just find that with the women, it's too nice. And I feel like 4 defeats in 7 games, that would be a question. Bang! You've had 4 defeats in 7 games. What are you going to do? That's the kind of real tough question that I, in a way, as a fan, I want to hear her answering. I want to know what's going on. I want to know what you're doing in training. Why, they should be saying you've had X amount of injuries in training. Why is it happening there? And I know she ended up talking about this and that, and talking about, and we've talked about it. They're going to come back earlier and all this, but there would be questions asked in sort of that respect that are more difficult, more tough, and I feel like in the women's game, and hopefully with Sky it'll come, because there'll be more analysis, more of this, more of that, more eyes on it. I feel like it's getting more pressure these games. We're seeing with the fouls that they're making and the way that Casey was shouting at the ref. I mean, she did boot off at the ref, but I think someone should have said to her, but the referee, well, she did end up saying, but someone should have said, well, that didn't cost you the game, though, did it? And I just think maybe I'm too mean. That's what I think. Maybe I'm too mean, but I want to hear the actual questions, real hard-hitting pressure questions that matter. And I feel like slowly building there, slowly getting there. Friends of our show that come on, Emma, Molly, they are asking good questions, but just watching it, I want to hear more. I want to know more detail, why certain things are happening. Yes, she doesn't have to answer, but I feel like if enough people are asking it, you'd hear. So maybe, Stu will say what he thinks and Jack will say and John, but, definitely, guys, that's what I want to know.
Stu, if you want to go first, but I'll just quickly say where I am. I think I'm 100% behind that. I think I'll probably be a little bit softer, so I'll definitely be asking about the players. Me personally, I probably wouldn't go asking about the 4 out of 7 because I couldn't do that because obviously being a fan, I couldn't do it. But I know Natalie, you'll just go for it. But Stu, where is the borderline? I mean, come on, you just could tell us a little bit about your experiences. What do you know? What can they do? What can't they do? You tell us.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I've been very privileged to take part in press conferences involving the Lionesses, involving Chelsea and the Northern Irish national team. And on no occasions do you ever have to provide your questions beforehand. You're free just to go and ask them. Ultimately, it's just kind of done with common sense respect, to be honest. As Natalie said, you can ask the tough questions, but it's how you go about asking them. And there's a certain broadcaster who's just won rights for women's football who I've been with in press conferences, and the way that they badger the interviewee with the same questions just to get the headline, it's a bit embarrassing, to be honest. And that's one of the things that we may get from this unnamed company for their 24-hour news channel when they do get the rights. They're looking for the sensational headlines, and women's football in generally isn't about that. You can ask those tough questions. You can say, and I believe that if I was in front of Casey Stoney, I could turn around and say, looking at your record at the beginning of the season, you've been so consistent, but it's turned around. What for you has been the difference? And you're not turning around saying, haha, you're losing. Why are you losing? You're going to get sacked in the morning, because that's just not how you would do it. As most fans would never put it that way. Most journalists would never put it that way, whether you're a professional journalist or a volunteer writer like myself. So it's just about being respectful.
Can I just jump in on that one then? So I agree. And as a human, as a nice person, that's what I would do as well. That's exactly the way I would have worded it. But you're not going to get the right answer there, are you? You're just going to get that. I think you're then encouraging a blanket answer.
Okay, if the subject is the sort of person that will give you a blanket answer, you're getting that whatever. It doesn't matter how you word it. If they are media trained or if they've been prepared, then that's the answer you're going to get. Doesn't matter how you do it. They're not going to play the game. They're going to, and that's what you get in a lot of the men's game. They know what they're going to say, and it doesn't matter how you ask it. You could ask a completely different question, but they'll pull you into the answer that they want to give about something about this game. And I believe that Casey was obviously upset with the refereeing, and she made sure that she controlled the narrative of that post-match. She could have been asked any question. She would have brought it back onto that subject. And I'm not saying wrongly. I would support her on it. And if I was within the club, if I was in her position, I'd take the fine. If there's a fine coming because she's bringing the game to disrepute, I'd take that fine, because there's a bigger question. And who knows, maybe she's bumped into Sir Alex in the corridors. He's given a few little tips about deflection. And we've all probably read some of Sir Alex's books where he says, just take the pressure off the players. Everyone was, after that game, was talking about Casey Stoney and the referee. She's a very intelligent coach, and while I completely believe that she meant what she said about the referees, it's probably not lost on her that if everyone's talking about her after the game, they're not criticising their players. They're not talking about how Kristen Press has been a bit of a disappointment through the various factors, but she has been a bit of a disappointment, bearing in mind the level that she's been at. But I haven't really heard anyone say that. I haven't really heard anyone talking about, apart from maybe Natalie, talking about Lauren James too much. They've just been letting her get back into the squad. They've not been putting pressure on her. And similarly with Katie Zellum, she's club captain. Your club captain should be starting every single game, but she's not. But people haven't really been talking about it because Casey's carried the narrative quite well. But then I guess it goes back to Natalie's original point. Why aren't people asking about that? I don't know. But I have found that there are certain press conferences I've been in where players will speak freely, but I think that's because they're in an environment they've worked in over years. Within women's football, all of the journalists, they know each other. It's still relatively small. And they all know the players. There is a community within it, and there's a community that's respectful, and there's a layer of trust that's been built up. And that's one thing that I hope isn't lost when women's football grows into this massive product. I hope it doesn't turn into this massive monster where it's all impersonal, and then you just get standard scripted answers every single time, and we don't have that so much. With Casey Stoney, with Emma Hayes, with Carla Ward, that just to name a few, they give honest and frank opinions, and I'm sure if you're the referee from Friday, you probably don't feel like it was respectful, but I don't think that Casey was attacking that person to say that they're incompetent. It's part of the bigger picture, which is that referees need to be first and foremost professional and given the level of support. Maybe she wants VAR introduced. Referees are brilliant in my eyes. They're fantastic. Everything they do is fantastic, but they've got to be supported. It's like if you're just throwing an amateur referee into a top-level women's game, it's like hiring a Michelin star chef and then giving him one of those little camping stoves in a microwave. You've got to give them the tools to be able to do their job. I don't ever question any of the referees' integrity. Did they make wrong decisions? Yes, but that's because they're not given the training and the input and the support that they are in the men's game, and even they make mistakes. So we can take those mistakes, but support them. I've gone off topic a bit there. John, wind it back.
I just want to bring Jack in. Just regarding, like, obviously we were speaking a little bit last night, and I know you were speaking to Natalie a few days ago. Just what's your overall summary and thoughts of what you hear in press conferences from both the interviewer and the interviewees?
I think that there's an element, like Stuart mentioned, there's that element of, yes, respect, but because it's that community, small, wanting to be respectful, so it's even too respectful in the sense of we don't want to upset anyone, we don't want to step on anyone's toes, that kind of thing. Like I'm not talking specifically with United here, although you can draw it to United in regards to things that we've mentioned, but the whole COVID issue that came about with Arsenal, Chelsea, City, and us having players abroad and matches postponed because of that. That has it looks like it's kind of been swept under the rug a bit. It was obviously a big issue when it came out, but it's questions have really been asked or answered in regards to it. And you have the likes of Bristol who had to go out and play, even though they said we cannot play. So there's a bit of a lack of transparency there, and why Bristol were told you have to play, but then again, Arsenal, Chelsea, City was said no. You're right. You don't have to. It's a long time gone now, but Alex Morgan came into the league and she was advised, or Tottenham were advised, she doesn't have to go through the whole COVID protocol like our players had to when they joined. Everton, of times that they've had some kind of strange problem with pitch and all this, and now they've had a fire there, which I'd love to know who would burn down a ground. That they've had all these kinds of little issues where we can't play, and Willie Kirk says, I think on Friday or whatever it is, we don't have anyone with COVID. We can play, and then the next, we can't play. and it's like no big deal is being made of it, and that's one of the things that I'm hoping does change with Sky. Because of this, I'm hoping that you'll get more professionalism out of that, and you won't be able to say, oh no, well, sorry, we can't do this. You know, Birmingham have had so many postponements because of pitch issues. Last season it was Liverpool with
sorry to interrupt, but they'll have to play these games because they'll all be on telly.
It's like, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I was going to say that they'll have to play these games because they'll all be on telly.
Well, you see, that's my hope. That's my hope, is that they have to play the game rather than make up some kind. Again, make up. That's just my interpretation of it. But I find it curious that there have been so many last-minute moments after being told that everything's okay, the match can go ahead. That's not just this season; it's last season as well. And we saw this also whilst we were in the Championship. We had a couple of occasions like this. The Charlton incident with we had to provide a gas bottle or balloon for a Charlton player that was injured because they didn't have the proper equipment. And again, those kinds of questions, it looks like they don't get asked, or if they do get asked, they're kind of quickly swept to the rug. And it all comes down to professionalism and transparency, I think. And, it's yes, you can point it to United, the amount of defeats, the injuries, that kind of thing. It plays into that as well. But I'm looking at also at the grander scheme of the league. It looks like no one will really push on those kind of questions.
Nat, I mean, Jack's raised like so many talking points there of, I guess, subjects that we'll never get to the bottom of, or this, that, and the other. But just because of time, I mean, if you could wrap this subject up, what are your kind of thoughts on all this? For me,
I sit in between both. I sit in between Stu. Yeah, let's do it respectfully. Let's do it in a nice way, because I think, that is an element of the women's game that I do like, and I do like that I know Stu, and Stu can go and interview the Lioness manager and that, all the people that we've had on. I do like that, but at the same time, I do think that it needs to get pushed more. And I remember when we first started getting like interviews from Casey, it was things like, "Oh, Casey, what do you think about Teddy and Tilly playing football?" And it's great. It's great but that was every week. And I feel like now they've moved away from that, and they actually are asking the hard hitting questions. And I can see Jack laughing, but it sounds so strange. But it's through getting to know people like Emma, Molly, Rich, Asif, people that go to the conference, Stu, and saying the fans want to know X, Y, and Z. We want to know why Hayley Ladd's not playing. And this is where I think, in a way, I'm different from Stu. I come in from a fan's perspective. I will ask us, not in a horrible way to her. I won't go, you need to tell me this. But I'll say to her, boss, in my opinion, Hayley Ladd, our player of the season, why is she not playing? She's our best central defensive. And she'll probably come out and say, well, the stats say this. Cool. But I just want to know why. And as a fan, you don't get to know everything why. But I feel like in the men's game, you know about it before it's even happened, you get updates, Rashford, about Rashford's having a shoulder injury, surgery, whatever, But Emma always comes through, and that's because I think she interacts with the fans. Molly does it as well, and they want to know what we're saying. They're reading what we're saying, because for me, we're the people clicking and pushing their content. So you want to bring what we want to hear. And at the minute, the question is sort of about Hayley Ladd. Is she injured? Is she another one that's injured? Because from what it looks like, I'm just saying it from the outside. Why is she coming off every minute? Why isn't she starting a game like this? Player of the year last year. What's going on? And I just think, I don't know, I'd ask it in a nice way, like Stuart said, but that's what I want to know. I mean, to be fair to them, they brought up the question of why are you getting so many injuries? We've got a full transcripted reason why. Some people still didn't believe it. And I think that's what you're always going to get. You're always going to get people who don't believe it, who think there should be more answers. But I think I sit between both of them. I see both sides, and yeah, with all that's what's happened. Sky, we can love them, we can hate them, but I think it is going to push up the accountability, the standards, the everything for everyone. And I just hope that it turns out positive and everyone gets the kind of football they want to see and enjoy.
And that is exactly what we've been calling for, isn't it? Because we've been saying before it was announced regarding Sky, we've always said that if this deal goes through, it forces things to happen, doesn't it? And hopefully that is going to be the case. We was going to talk a little bit about the lower leagues and potentially the pyramid and promotion and relegation, this, that, and the other with Stuart. But I am conscious of time. But Stuart, I would just like to hear just one opinion regarding, is this now the right time to maybe look at with Sky taking over and more money coming into the game? Would you say that this is the right time now to be looking at maybe increasing teams in the top tiers or some sort of restructure?
Yeah, there definitely needs to be a restructure from the top and the bottom of the women's football pyramid. I think everyone agrees, and I don't know if you touched on it with Lee Birch when he was in recently, but the leagues can facilitate 14 clubs. Certainly, definitely. To try and talk about the leagues, but the leagues beneath, there are clubs that are itching to get their hands on that level of competition. They want the money that comes with it. It's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword, or chicken and egg, really, isn't it? You need the money to get in there, but you can't get the money until you get in there, and they're desperate for it. So if they can create a pathway for these clubs to climb up, it's only going to be a positive thing, and it has to happen. It has to happen. In a nutshell.
I know you probably put a bit of groundwork into this, and unfortunately we have kind of run out of time, but we'll definitely, things are going to be happening on this channel, and we're not going to say what just yet, but it's big, and we will be getting you back on, Stu, and we'll go through all this, give it the credit that it deserves. I don't want to rush through it just for the sake of 5 minutes, so I'd rather get back on and go through it properly.
I'll rabbit on for the whole hour just on that myself anyway. So yeah.
We'll just have you on, Stu. That's what we'll do. Just have you. No football. We'll just have you, and we'll talk about it. Because for me, I think it does need to. I think more than one team can go up, more than one team can go down. And if we're just talking about from a WSL's perspective, the WSL can get bigger, the Championship can get bigger, especially if it goes professional, and then that's going to be more players coming out of those leagues going down as well.
Can we do that about 11 p.m. and have a few drinks?
Yeah.
We're going to wrap it up. We will wrap it up because we've just gone for just over an hour. Thank you to everybody in the comments. It's getting to a point now where you guys are talking so much to each other that I can't keep up with everything that you're saying, but I am trying to read the other subject, and if you're talking about a subject, I'll try and bring it in where I can. Jack, lovely to see you again, mate. Thank you for coming on. As I just mentioned to Stu, we are going to be doing a few things differently in future, so there will be opportunities for you to come back on if you're free. So Jack, thank you for coming back on, mate.
Cheers. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And if somebody wants to find you on Twitter to talk about United men's and women's team, how can they go about doing that?
So it's at Ripper48, and I'll have it next time in my name, like everybody else has done. Very cleverly.
It's a good little trick, yeah, absolutely. You can find Jack on Twitter the way that we've kind of promoted the show. You'll be able to find his handle. Stuart, if anybody wants to find you or the website, how can they do it?
Shameless plug just around here. You can find us on at Synth71blog on most social media platforms. Google's really good. Ask Jeeves is really good. Bing's really good. You should be able to find us all on them. We always appreciate interaction. I think one of the key things that Natalie said earlier is we talk about what we think, what we want to talk about, and what we think people want to listen to. But if people say, I want to know about this, I want to know about that, it can change our view. As I say, I put 3 different tweets out this morning about the TV deal, And as I started to read a few more, I kind of softened up a little bit, and I thought, oh, actually, you think about it. So listening to other people's views is something that I really enjoy, and it helps me formulate my own opinion.
Yeah, 100%. That's one of the reasons why we do this show, so we can learn and educate ourselves, but also people in the comments and each other. Natalie, if anybody wants to find you, how can they go about doing that, mate?
Natalie_17, get on it. But you know where to find me, and always on All for United.
100%, yeah, absolutely. So it's Monday today. So tomorrow, Matt Crane is with myself, Anthony, and Gareth on our Twitter page, going live, talking about similar subjects today, and also touching on education. So how people are going through education as well as playing as well. So the troubles that they have there. So that's going to be an interesting show. That's on our Twitter page. And on Thursday, we've got a show on here as well. So plenty to look forward to. And just fingers crossed for the weekend, the game ahead. And hopefully we'll be smiling at the end of it. See you guys soon. And thank you to everybody again in the comments. Thank you.